Bienvenidas to Latina Literati, the channel for Latinas and the Latina friendly. The channel for people that are interested in great places, interesting books, and wonderful people from the past and from the present. Today we are taking you with us on our trip to Kona on the big island of Hawaii. Madame Pele, the goddess of lava that formed these islands. You can feel her mana or her powers as you tour the volcanoes and see the majestic lava everywhere on the island. We visited some sacred sites where the god Lono still dwells, and also you can feel his mana in the beautiful sites that include a place where, for example, 23 of the great chiefs of Hawaiian history, where they once rested. And even though they're no longer there, the traditional dwellings and the traditional places where people would go to feel that majesty, to feel the power of the great kings of the past, is still there. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about where the people of Hawaii come from. So thousands and thousands of years ago, Polynesians, using only the stars, the placement of the sun and the moon, found these islands and brought with them their traditions and their cuisine and their practices. And one of these is a code of conduct called kapu, that which is not allowed or that which is prohibited. So for example, you could not look at the king directly to his eyes. You had to have your face down on the ground. And really interesting, all of the wonderful plants and animals that are unique to the Hawaiian Islands. About 90% of the animals, flora and fauna, that are found in Hawaii, endemic to Hawaii, are unique to these islands. The big island of Hawaii is mostly lava rock, but there is some lush areas in the south, and that's where the famous coffee farms are.
A variety called Kotura, which is a sweeter cherry. It was brought here in 1823. There's no evidence that the missionaries brought it. We don't know who brought coffee to Hawaii.
And I would say that one of the heights of our trip was a wonderful tour of the Kona soap company, and they're located in a coffee farm, so I highly recommend that if you come over to the island. And so going back to the traditions of the Hawaiian people, really interesting, the role of women. So not only is Pele the greatest goddess, but she is considered a protector of the islands and keeps things in balance. The last time there was a major volcanic eruption here was in 2018.
A violent eruption is underway in the Puna district on the island of Hawaii, about 200 miles over water from Waikiki Beach and the Honolulu area on Oahu.
Whole towns just disappeared.
This eruption touched the lives of 1,000 people, destroying homes and valuable lands. Yet there were no deaths.
But at the same time, several feet of the island were added as the lava went into the sea.
This is visual evidence of how the islands were formed. For as the lava cools, it now becomes a part of the land, slowly adding more and more shoreline.
So going back to the role of women, one of the things that women did was to weave mats from different palm fronds. And here you can see some of the children picking the leaves that are used, and then the women treating them and then weaving the mats. The other thing that women were responsible for, aside from that which was in the house, was using plants like hau to make clothing. And so clothing was made of bark, but it was treated so it was soft. And then there were sacred patterns placed on it for protection and beauty. And these paintings were actually in the hotel. I had not expected to see them, but there's a whole array of paintings that show different things going on in traditional Hawaiian life. And I thought we would share some of the paintings with you. And so here you can see some of them. incredible navigators, and in these double canoes traveling all over these islands, different groups settled in different islands. And so there was warfare between the islands, and you can't speak about Hawaiian history without speaking of the great King Kamehameha, who united the islands. He made the big island his home. Perhaps other islands have other opinions of him, but he unified the islands and lived here in the big island. I also wanted to go back to the sacred site that we visited. I was really impressed with the concept of redemption and the concept of sanctuary. So if you were at war with the big island and you made it to a place of sanctuary, as a warrior, you could not be touched. If you were impacted by the strife and war and you made it to a place of sanctuary, you were safe. So the elderly, women, children who might not be participating in the fighting, if you were in the place of sanctuary, then you were safe. And you received kind of redemption and care, both physical care, in other words, your wounds are tended to, but you also received spiritual care. Really interesting how this was such an integral part of the culture of the Hawaiian people, the concept of redemption and the concept of sanctuary. And I think that's something we can learn from them because they're really powerful concepts. Another highlight of this visit has been the visit to the Volcano National Park and walking along the rim of the crater and seeing the magnificence of the volcano, as well as seeing the beautiful crater floor below, were just really special hikes, and highly recommend that if you get a chance to come to the Big Island. And now for my favorite part of the video, the book recommendations. The touchstone of books on Hawaii continues to be James Michener's Hawaii. Even though it was written in 1959, his description of the geological formation of these islands and the flora and fauna that appear over millions of years and how the ancient Hawaiians lived, for me, just opened my eyes. I read it in high school, never knowing that I would one day travel here, but it was just a wonderful book, and I highly recommend that as kind of the place to begin. There are many, many books, obviously, about Hawaii, the traditional Hawaiians, the kings like Kamehameha, but that's an easy read, even though it's not a short book, but it's well worth getting through it because it's really an interesting book. The second book recommended is Shark Dialogue by Kiana Davenport. And this includes some of the traditional Hawaiian myths and beautiful imagery of Hawaiian lifestyle, and even more importantly, the central concept of the traditional Hawaiian life, which was ohana, family. We're in this together, we're all together. And so this book really has the theme of ohana through it, through thick and thin, and so would recommend it. Shark Dialogue by Davenport. And then the third book I happened to find at the library when I was looking for books on Hawaii, and it's called The Burning Island by Hester Young. And it has to do with a woman who has psychic powers and is able to find children who may have gone astray. Interesting for both the concept of a woman who can help children, but also the background of Hawaiian life and the different groups of people that have moved to the island and have made modern Hawaii what it is today. So you have groups from Asia and groups from the United States and groups from other islands. And one of the things that you hear in the evenings is the beautiful sound of the Puerto Rican tiny frog called koki. And that's the sound it makes, koki, koki, koki. And the Hawaiian Islanders don't like it because it's obviously something that was brought by Puerto Ricans that were brought here over 100 years ago to work on the pineapple plantations, the pineapple plantations of Dole and Del Monte and others. They were lied to, this may surprise you, and brought across the United States by train. And in fact, the first Puerto Rican club in the United States is founded in San Francisco by Puerto Ricans that refused to get on the ship to go any further. Once here, they're kept in slave conditions. They can't leave the plantations. There's no medical care. There's no education for the children. It's a horrible, horrible situation. And so the fact that there's a constant reminder of a people that helped build these islands that were brought pretty much against their will and were exploited like the native Hawaiians themselves. I won't get into all of the ways that Hawaii ended up a state because I feel like that may even deserve its own video. But I just want to say to the Hawaiians, thank you for sharing your beautiful island with us. Mahalo, as they say here. Thank you to our friends who hosted us and made this special trip possible, sharing their beautiful island home with us. And so as always, we wish you salud, amor y mucho cariño. Gracias.